All right, everyone. Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So before we get started, we just want to observe um, meeting etiquettes, right? So, which means that um, when our sessions are on, we want to make sure that we are muted at all times, right? This will enable us avoid lapses in the sound and a lot of noise which might be disturbing other people, right, from listening clearly in our session. And if we have a question at any point, we can raise up our hands and just leave it raised, right? There's a button for raising our hands, right? You see the raise hand button there. So just click on the button. It will give us a signal that you want to ask a question. And when we open the floor for questions to be asked, we're going to get right to you, and then you can unmute and ask your questions, right? That keeps the meeting room organized at all times. Okay, so let's get right into what we have for today. All right, so we want to explore our learning journey, right? What are we going to learn throughout our time in the data analytics course? What is expected from us, and what are the things that we hope to see? And what are the things that we hope to see? Okay, so let's proceed. Okay, so throughout our time with the data analytics course, we're going to be learning various things like handling spreadsheets. We're going to understand how to use Power BI, SQL, and also version control in handling our projects and also our workflow. Okay, so in the first part of this course, we are going to be understanding what data analytics is, also the historical and modern data analytics. We're going to understand how data analytics and business fits into play, and also a brief overview of data analytics. We would also be looking at problem-solving strategies, and also our framework here at Voyaj AI, which is called the CCAA framework, which enables us or gives us good leverage when it comes to solving problems. Then we're also going to be going in depth into these frameworks, which is the CCAA framework, which is clarify, collect, analyze, and apply. In clarify, we're going to be looking at visual storytelling, communication, and also the problem statement. Then we'll move on to collect, where we're going to be looking at data availability, spreadsheets, and also the problem landscape. Then we'll dive down to analyze, where we're going to be having a brief understanding of summary statistics, Power BI, SQL, and for the advanced class, Python. Then we move on to apply, where we're going to understand how to provide solutions to businesses, project management, and also version control for our entire project. So let's dive in, okay? So in the spreadsheet sprint, we're going to be understanding what spreadsheets are. We are going to be understanding how to load data into spreadsheets, formatting cells, data cleaning with spreadsheets, and also visualizing data with spreadsheets. So when we talk about spreadsheets, we mean Excel, where I'm sure most of us are familiar with Excel. So in this academy, we're going to be using Excel, and in case you come around Google Sheets and Excel are just, they're similar to each other. One is owned by Microsoft and the other is owned by Google. Then we move on to Power BI. Here we're going to be having a brief introduction to Power BI, having a brief overview of what Power BI is all about and how it's being used. We're going to understand how to load data into Power BI, understand how to clean data with Power BI, how to design a Power BI dashboard, how to create and format visuals, and also how to publish a dashboard with Power BI. Then we go down to SQL, where we are going to be having a very good understanding or brief introduction to what SQL is all about. So SQL stands for Structured Query Language. We are going to be understanding SQL command languages, relational databases, how to use SQL queries to analyze data, how to work with MySQL, which we're going to learn how to set up the environment that we can use to write our SQL queries. We're going to have a very good and in-depth knowledge of databases and tables. We are also going to understand how to use queries to clean our data and also analyze our data. Then we go down to version control. In version control, we're going to be understanding how to use Trello for effective project management and also how to use GitHub for version control. So project management, like the name implies, is simply managing the life cycle of a project. Then version control is simply controlling the states of a particular project you're working on, which means you can go back to its previous state and without actually losing the entire files. Then we'll also learn how to collaborate in the workspace, which is extremely important. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our lesson outline. The next thing we're going to be getting into is we're going to be looking at how we can understand our CCAA framework, which means we're going to be diving into Clarify. So before we move forward, do we have any question? Okay, then. So let's dive into Clarify. So just to make this clear, the website where you guys can learn from, which is our learning website, is going to be shared sometime this week. All right. And we are all going to be moved into a platform called Discord, which I'm going to be showing you guys what Discord is all about and how to get Discord on your machine and also on your phone. Okay, so Discord enables us manage our community effectively well, right? We are going to be moved to Discord, and from Discord, you are going to have access to all the resources we're going to be using in our academy, right? You're also going to be having access to the website, which is our learning website. Our learning website is quite different from the conventional website, right? So we have a website where people can visit, but we have a learning website that is specially designed for our students. This website contains all the materials you're going to be needing from foundations. Even these slides are going to be made available on the website. Videos are going to be made available on the website. And also your access to a particular session is going to be found on the website, which means that before, let's say by Friday, when the session starts, you have to go to the website to click on a particular link that brings you directly to where we are now, which is Google Meet, right? Which means that if you don't have access to the website, you cannot access the classes, right? So everybody are going to have access to the website so that you can have access to the meetings, have access to previous recordings, just like this one now, and also have access to the learning materials. The learning materials is going to consist of slides and videos for some sessions, for some learning tracks. Some learning tracks have only slides, while some learning tracks have only videos, while some have videos and slide attached to them, so that you can have more materials for your learning. And apart from that, you also be learning a lot from the live sessions. Okay, so let's proceed. So now we're going to be talking about clarify. And this section of clarify we're going to be talking about is called the problem statement. Here, we are going to understand how to define a problem statement. We're going to understand the anatomy of a problem statement, understand the problem statement within the CCAA framework, and also learn how to develop a problem statement. So let's dive in. So what is a problem statement? A problem statement simply is an area of concern, right? So it's something that we hope to improve on. And there are various things we should understand about the problem statement. It should address a cause, it should be measurable and attainable, and also aligned to the goal of functioning of an operation, right? So that's a simple way to define a problem statement. And one thing we should understand about the problem statement is that it consists of three different parts, which is the vision, the issue, and the process. So what is the vision? The vision is simply the potential states after the problem has been solved, which means how do we expect the problem to look like? Or how do we expect the situation to look like after it has been solved? Then we'll talk about the issue. The issue is simply the current state of the problem, right? The current state of the problem simply means how the problem looks before it has been solved. And the process simply means what the method or the way we intend using in solving that particular problem. So we have the vision, the issue, and also the process. So when we talk about the vision is also, we can use a question like why, which means, is there a need to solve this particular problem? Why do we want to actually solve this problem? Then when we talk about what simply means, what is the current issue at hand, right? So what and issue can be interchanged, right? So when we're asking the last questions, it's called how do we intend solving this problem, which is also the same thing as the process. Then, so when we're talking about why is collect, so there's always a continuous loop. Continuous loop simply means there's a back and forth when we arrive at the why, which means it's collected from feedback. And one thing we should understand is that to move from what to why, we actually have to collect data. It's very important we collect data because the more data we collect determines how we solve that particular problem. And the data we collect determines the process we are going to use to actually solve that particular problem. That is what we mean by why, what, and how. So how do we actually formulate a problem statement using these three components of a problem statement? So like I mentioned earlier, there are three different components of a problem statement. We have the what, the why, and the how, which is also the vision, the issue, and the process. So let's take a scenario at hand, right? So you're new to the data team at the live assurance company called Infinity Live Assurance. And they have asked you to identify the 14% drop in revenue for the last business year. They have dropped in their underwriting percentages to 3%. The industry average is 15%, which means that where their target is meant to be 15%, but they are currently at 3%, right? The company can potentially sell 75,000 policies but currently they are selling only 30,000 policies at 450 million rands per annum. So you were tasked to create a data solution to tackle this problem, and you're presenting the plan to the CEO on the problem. So this is the issue that Infinity Life Assurance faces currently. But as the data analyst, you've been asked to prepare a problem statement that can help you and your entire team solve this problem at hand. So let's proceed and break down this issue in three different components. So why do we hope to solve this problem? Why we hope to solve this problem is because we are losing revenue. We are hoping to hit a larger amount. Where we are currently is 450 million rands, but we can do better because if we sell 75,000 policies, currently we're selling 30,000. If we can sell 75,000 policies, we'll be making way more than 450 million rands, right? And our market analysis shows underperformance, right? Which means that currently we can increase our underwriting by 5 times because we are 3%. The industry average is 15%. If you multiply 3 times 5, we'll get to 15%, which means we need to 5 times our underwriting percentages, right? And there's also been a in um, drop in revenue by 14%. And also we hope to achieve a particular sale at 75,000 policies. All right. Now, what is the issue? The issue is that our revenue has reduced, our underwriting percentages has reduced, and also we are selling 30,000 policies. Now, how do we intend to move from selling 30,000 policies to selling 75,000 policies, which is the process we intend to take, right? One of the processes that can be taken, right, as a data analyst, or one of the processes we are crafting for our CEO is that we are going to do a lot of market analytics so that we can do what? Targeted marketing. And when we do targeted marketing, we can now do what? Craft, customize, and personal policies for people. This means that we won't be giving a policy that only a rich man can afford. We'll be taking it and giving it to a poor man, right? That's going to effectively affect our sales when it comes to selling these policies. So we need to craft out policies that is suited for those that have low income, those that have middle income, and those that have a very high income. So what would our problem statement look like? Our problem statement is going to be this. At Infinity Life Assurance, we want to be market leaders in underwriting policies. By increasing our underwriting by 5 times and increasing sales of 75,000 policies per annum, we can increase revenue year on year. Now, that is the vision, right? Now, what is the issue at hand? The issue at hand is that we have noticed a drop in revenue by 14%, a below industry underwriting standard, 3% against 15% respectively, and the miss of our target sale of 75,000 products. Within the data team, we will build systems to perform market analysis, predict customized and personal policies for our clients, and optimize resource allocation towards underwriting. Now, that is the process. Putting the three together, we have our what? Problem statement, right? So the problem statement, like I said, is made up of 3 parts. But when we put these 3 parts together, we craft an effective problem statement. During the week, an exercise is going to be sent out to everyone, right? Where you are going to be given an issue at hand so that you can use to craft your own problem statement, which means everybody has to submit that particular assignment, right? So we don't have to wait when it's technical before we get our hands dirty. As long as our sessions have started, you are going to be having exercises to do at every single class. Okay, so we have another problem statement scenario, right? But this is going to be available for you on the slides. So you guys can go through this and it's just the same process and arrive at the problem statement, right? As much as we want to carry you guys by the hand, we also want you guys to try something out by yourself. So what makes a good problem statement? So a problem statement must be specific, right? Looking at the previous problem statement we discussed is straight to the point. No beating around the bush, right? It needs to be precise and to the point, which means we don't have to talk about so many things. We just need to hit the nail on the head. Also, a problem statement needs to be clear, unbiased, and measurable, right? It has to have a time frame. For example, looking at our previous problem statement, we know when these things are to be achieved. We said year on year, which means at the end of every year, we can measure if we are actually meeting our goal at the end of every year to understand if we're making progress or if we're actually regressing. So at the end of this session, what have we learned so far? We've learned how to define and describe a clear problem statement. We've also worked on a problem statement within the CCA framework and also identified the whys, the whats, and the hows when constructing a problem statement. So at the end of the slides, you're going to be getting access to more information. So you just have to click on any of these links. It will take you to a particular website where you can get access to more information about a problem statement. So before we proceed, do we have any question? Does anybody have any question? Does anyone have any question? Okay, then let's proceed. So we are going to be looking at another part of the Clarify framework, which is called Visualize and Communicate. So at the end of this tutorial, we're going to actually be learning the Voyaj data analysis process. We're going to be understanding what visualize means, what communicate means, and also the tools we are going to be using for visualizing and communicating our results in this academy. And then we can put this particular track to a close. So when we look at this screen, if anyone can tell me what they are able to recognize by this moving picture. And anyone, what image do you recognize out of this moving picture?
A dinosaur.
Awesome. So if you look at the picture, you're going to find out that a dinosaur actually plays in one of these moving lines, right? So that is the use of visualization, right? So visualization is easy for us to recognize things when we are able to visualize them. It's very easy for us to recognize things when we are able to visualize them. So clarifying our work is about visualizing the data and communicating our insights in an effective way, right? So what is our process? Simply, we are looking at clarify, collect, analyze, and apply. So visualization or visualize is a dual skill of understanding and interpreting our data through visual images. And when we talk about clarifying, it means that we actually need to understand our data. And that brings us to data exploration, right? When we talk about data exploration, we're simply saying data mining, right? So when we I'm sure if you go to a cave, let's assume you are in a cave, right? Imagine yourself inside a cave and you're looking for gold. So all you're doing is you're taking the hammer or the axe that's currently in your hands and you are hitting it on the walls of the cave, right? All what you're doing is you're looking if there is gold hidden inside that wall. So what you're doing currently is you are mining gold. You are gold mining. You are looking for gold, right? That is the same thing we do with our data. When we mine data, we are looking for insights, right? So data mining is a key to understanding all of our data, right? And inside our data, there will be individual variables. When we talk about variables, we mean columns, right? I'm sure you guys are familiar with rows and columns. When we dive into Excel, you are going to be understanding what we are talking about, right? So individual variables will be summarized by what? Summary statistics and distributions. So when we talk about summary statistics, we mean the mean, the median, the mode, standard deviation, variance, and all of them sorts. We'll also be looking at the relationships between variables determined by hypothesis testing, right? When we get into our tracks like Power BI and SQL, we're going to be exploring most of these things. Then we also need to understand that for us to actually visualize our data, that particular visualization is placed inside something called a dashboard, right? So dashboards, the use of dashboard is to turn our data into insights. If you pay attention to this image here, you'll find out that there are different images inside this square. That square that contains the entire images is called a dashboard. Why the individual images are called charts, right? And the reason why we always have a dashboard is to find key performance indicators. We also call them KPIs, right? Because you as a data analyst, you are mining your data looking for insights, but the business person at the other end is not interested in your SQL codes, right? The person is only interested in KPIs, key performance indicators, that makes them understand their data and even their business as a whole. So visualization and communication go hand in hand. But for us to visualize our data, there are different rules that apply when we want to make a visualization. The first thing is we have to show our data. It's very important, right? I mean, you won't be able to visualize anything if you don't have data. The second thing is use graphics, right? When we go to Power BI and Excel, when we make our visualizations, you are going to be seeing live graphics in play. Another thing is avoid chart junk, which is things that are not necessary. When it comes to visualization, you need to throw them away because they are just making the end user more confused rather than understanding what you're trying to communicate. Then we also want to utilize data inc, which means that each data has a particular reference point, right? We're going to be understanding this when we get to Power BI. We also want to use labels, right? So probably you are looking for the tallest guy in the class and you make a visualization for that particular to that particular effect. What you want to do is to put at the bottom of the graph that this graph is for what? The tallest guy in the class. That way, anybody that is looking at your visualization understands what that visualization is actually trying to communicate. Then when we talk about utilize macro and micro, use layers, use multiples, we are going to actually talk about that when we go into Power BI full time, right? These things are not explainable, rather we show them to you. Then we talk about use colors. It's quite descriptive. When you're making a visualization, it's good to play around with colors, right? There are different color palettes that you'll be introduced to. These color palettes will enable you choose the right colors for your project. Then we also have understand narratives, right? So there's something in Power BI called narrative that helps you explain or breaks down your entire visualization into key points so that anybody that is looking at your visualization knows the key points that that visualization is actually trying to communicate. Then what is communication? Communication is actually the skill of delivering solutions that create a change in the real world, right? And like we discussed earlier, problem statement, right? We explain what the problem statement is. So for you to actually communicate this problem statement, you need to be a good communicator, right? So communication, effective communication, is being able to describe your solution to suit your audience, right? As I've been explaining here and describing all these things, I've not been using data lingo. I've been trying to use stories and something that you can imagine in its simplest form so that you'll be able to understand it. Why? Because you are not yet at that stage where you can use data lingo to understand everything we're going to be saying. So, which means that I'm actually being concerned about you as my audience, which is what you're going to be doing. As a data analyst, you're going to be concerned about your audience, which means most times you are going to be faced with a technical audience. Another time, you're going to be faced with a non-technical audience. A doctor might understand what malaria is, but a doctor might not understand data lingo, right? So it's largely not about what you've done, but about what they must do, which means that your audience must know what they're meant to live with. They're meant to have a call to action, something that they're meant to do after your communication, your presentation. So presentations help us deliver our solutions with structure and evidence. As you look at this, everything we are doing here now is a presentation, and it has been structured for you to actually follow through, even when you're looking at the slides by yourself. Okay, so we also going to help you develop your written and spoken communication skills throughout the year. Even when you are going to be speaking about your presentation or presenting your findings to us, you are also going to do what we call a white paper. A white paper is just like a brief description of what your analysis is all about. So what tools do we use within the academy when we want to communicate our findings to people? The first thing we use is Google Docs, right? Google Docs is something you're going to be using to write a white paper, right? You guys are going to be shared into groups where you're going to have your colleagues or your colleague where you're going to be working together to write a white paper. And also Google Slides are what we use for presentations. So we are going to introduce you to Canva or Google Slides, depending on which direction you choose to take. Both of them do an effective work of presentations. So what I'm using currently is Canva, right? Not Google Slides. So both of them can do the job of presenting your data to us. Then you're also going to be working with Power BI, right? Power BI is a very good and good way to make interactive visualizations, right? We're also going to be teaching you how to publish these dashboards so that even though you've worked on them from your laptop, we can, from wherever we are, interact with your visualizations and know what you're trying to communicate. So what have we learned so far? We've learned that visualizing data and communicating, we've learned how to visualize our data and communicate our insights in an effective way. We'll also come to understand that understanding and interpreting your data through visual images is very, very important and key as a data analyst. And we've also come to understand the tools that we are going to be using throughout our time in the academy. Okay, do we have any questions before we move on? For those of us that are just joining in, the session is recorded, and by the end of the week, you guys are going to be getting, or before Tuesday next week, you guys are going to be getting access into a website, right? The website is just where you're going to have access to all the learning materials. They are structured so that for any particular learning track you want to get access to, which I would advise is to only get access to the one that you're currently learning to avoid you being overwhelmed, right? So this learning website is going to be available for you guys at the end of the session or by Tuesday next week so that you can get access to all the information you need, both the recorded session and also links to videos that will assist your learning journey. Okay, so let's proceed. All right, so we will move on to the next part of our framework, which is called collect. So collect, as the name implies, is simply to collect something, right? We are going to be understanding um how to collect data in the real world. We are also going to understand what is involved in gathering data, where do we get data, and also come to a conclusion of this. So throughout this entire process, we're going to make use of databases and spreadsheets. There are different ways we can collect data, right? We can use spreadsheets or databases. And databases has to do with SQL, spreadsheets has to do with Excel, right? Throughout your time in the academy, you're going to be learning how to make collection of data as easy as anything you can call it, right? So one thing we need to know is that throughout your time in the academy, you need to be prepared to collect or spend a lot of time collecting data, which is something that you should get used to. And one thing we should have in mind is that there is no such thing as a perfect data set. Most times you will spend your time going back and forth looking for a data that at least can suit most of the problem you're trying to solve, right? But the idea of waiting for a perfect data set is actually a fallacy. It's wrong because it never really happens. Most times the data you are looking to have to solve a particular problem is not the data you currently have, right? Which means you need to meet halfway between a perfect data set and the problem you're trying to solve and the problem you're trying to solve. So one thing we should understand about the Pareto principle is that the Pareto principle states that 80% of the effects come from 20% of the causes, which means that the problem you're seeing, or 80% of the problem you're seeing, can be accounted to 20% of our data sets, right? Which means when we are trying to analyze a data, most times a larger amount of our, or a larger part of our data set doesn't really communicate the problem we are trying to solve, right? Which is why we should always pay attention to those little parts of our data sets that point a finger to the problem or to the solution we are looking for, right? And one thing we should know is that there will be a back and forth process, right? Or a loop where we have to go from collecting the right data to analyzing our data and then going back to look to find out if we can collect more data, right? And we should always know that we need to use the data that is available to get started. And we are going to be building, we're going to be doing a lot of descriptive analytics, right, to actually describe and understand our data before we go into deep analysis. So what is actually involved in gathering data, right? Data is the essence of data science as a whole. So data analytics is just a little branch or a branch of data science, right? So data plays a very, very important part. And what are the processes involved? We need to know that we are going to first of all find our data, create the data, store the data, and then manage our data. That is deciding who gets access to that particular data set. And another thing we should have in mind is that collection of data or gathering data is a continual process, right? Even though we came across a particular data, we might have to go back to see if we can collect more data that can actually address our problems. So it's like a continual feedback loop that exists between the CCAA framework, right? We never stop gathering data. So it's impossible to do data science or data analytics without good quality data, right? That is where data cleaning comes into play. So garbage in, garbage out, right? In this gathering of data process, we're going to be doing a lot of data cleaning, right? So we need to make sure that our data is of good quality before we go ahead to communicate whatever insights that is found in that particular data. So where do we get data from? There are different sources we get data from, right? We have the internal source and the external source. Internal source can be your company's data, or maybe data collect or given to you by maybe the partner company you're working with. Why external source of data might be you using surveys, right, to collect data or getting data from an open source. There are different ways we can use in exploring data, and we're going to be exploring both the internal sources and the external sources in throughout our time in the academy, right? So what have we come to learn throughout this entire track? We've come to understand that there's no such thing as a perfect data set. And we've come to understand that there's always a process between finding, creating, storing, and managing data. We've also come to understand the multiple mediums for storing and collecting data. It could be both from the internal or external sources. All right, before we proceed, do we have any other question? Do we have any question before we proceed, guys?
No, no question from here. Well done.
All right. So the next thing we're going to be looking at currently is the analyze framework. So the analyze framework is just like the name implies, simply analyzing data, right? So it's a framework where we're going to be looking at the different tools we're going to be using in analyzing our data and the various things we actually need to keep in mind. Okay, so let's proceed. So throughout our time in this track, we're going to be understanding what is involved in analyzing data. We're going to come to understand what a data analyst katana is all about, and then bring this track to a conclusion as usual. So let's dive right in. So as we can see here, the Voyaj AI data analytics process, right, as we have discussed earlier, is clarify, collect, analyze, and apply. Here, we're going to be looking at how we can improve the processes of business by employing various tools that we can use to analyze our data. So what are the processes involved in analyzing data, right? First of all, we need to understand that we need to do what we call data wrangling, right? To extract information from the data. Then we need to also apply statistical tests. So this statistical test might actually involve hypothesis testing and manipulations, right, to process the data in a way we can use. Then we need to use this particular data to solve problems, right? So analyzing our data allows us to prepare and extract valuable information in finding a particular solution for a particular business. Every business has a unique solution that suits them, right? And as usual, there is a continual loop, right, that exists between our framework, even at this stage. Because when we get to the place where we are analyzing our data, we might realize that, okay, we need to clean our data. And when we go back to clean our data, we're also going to realize that we need to collect more data. So analyzing our data allows the data to be processed and consumed, right? Providing rich insights. And when we talk about analyzing data, we're going to be using various tools to analyze our data in the academy. We're going to be using MySQL for the basic course, of course. And then we're also going to be using Power BI. So MySQL is where we write our SQL codes, and Power BI is a place where we visualize our data effectively, right? So one thing we've come to know is that SQL is one of the tools, right? We are going to be using in our academy to actually analyze data. And analyzing data allows for information, right, to be easily consumed and transferred. Because when you've analyzed the data, it's easy for the business person at the other end to actually get insights both from their data and from your communication. All right. So, do we have any question before we proceed to our last framework? Okay. So, moving on, the last thing we're going to be looking at today is apply. Right? In this particular framework, we're going to be understanding what is involved in applying a solution for a particular business. So let's proceed. Okay, so throughout this particular track, we're going to understand what it means by developing a real-world solution. We're going to come to understand what project management is all about, and we're going to understand version control, the tools we're going to be using, and also put this entire session to a conclusion. Okay, so when we talk about apply, we mean that here we're going to be looking at the tools used for version control. We're going to be understanding the flow that is involved in a project lifecycle and also what it means by recommending a solution. So at different stages of the development lifecycle, team members will have to work together to actually bring out a solution for a particular business, right? So like I said earlier, you guys are going to be working together as a team. Some of you might be working as someone that is writing the SQL queries, and someone else might be working as someone that is doing the visualization work, while the next person might be working as the project manager involved in managing the flow of that particular project you guys will be working on. So when we mean by project management is simply managing the life cycle of a project, right? So when we talk about managing the life cycle of a project, first of all, we need to understand the project environment, right? Then that is what is involved in what is going to be involved in this project. What are the tools we need to use? Who are the people involved, right? And what is actually expected of us. Then the second thing is we need to actually define the project. What is the goal of this project? What are we trying to achieve? Right? When we are done with this project, what is the result we hope to see? Right? That is what we mean by project definition. Then the next thing we also have to pay attention is what? Project planning, which means to achieve this particular goal, what are the steps we need to take to achieve our particular goal? If we are looking to draw out a dashboard for AB and Sons for them to actually know where their money is going to, what are the steps we need to take for us to reach the end point of this project? Then the fourth step is technical execution. So this is where you guys as a team will come together, and also one person is writing the queries, the other person is trying to visualize the data, and the next person is taking down notes or using GitHub to actually control the flow or the version, the current state of the files that the entire team is using. Then the next thing is now project control. This is where GitHub comes into play. So one thing we should know is that there might be a situation whereby you get to project control and you realize that you guys made a mistake somewhere, probably at the planning stage of your project, where you need to go back and replan, or maybe you are working with the data team and you realize that, okay, the data engineer or the data analyst, one of the data analysts is no longer with the company. what do? You have to go back to the planning stage and replan. Okay, who is going to do what? Who is going to take over this guy's tax? Or you go back to project definition. In this stage, maybe you realize that the project has been changed, so or some things has been altered in the project. You need to go back and do what? Define the goals of the project. Then go down to project planning, technical execution, and then project control, where you get to the last phase of the project. So when we talk about version control, what do we mean by version control? So version control is simply saving the state of a file, right? So maybe today you worked on a particular data and tomorrow you want to access, and tomorrow you also updated that particular data you were working with. But probably on Monday next week, you want to go back to the way the data was Tuesday last week. Version control helps you do just that, right? So what we're going to be using for version control is GitHub, right? The advanced class will probably be using Git, but also we're going to be using GitHub in the basic course. So GitHub is something you're going to come in terms with, get familiar with, right? And know how to push, publish, and also upload files into your GitHub profile, which means that everybody will have a GitHub account. A GitHub account is free to open. Everybody will have a GitHub account. Everybody will upload their projects to the GitHub account because that is where recruiters look at. They want to look at your activity using GitHub because GitHub is used by almost all the tech companies all around the world. So what we want to do is we want to get you familiarized, give you the ability to work with these tools so that when you find yourself in a working environment, nothing comes as a surprise. All right. So when we talk about project management, we are, like we said earlier, we are going to be using Trello. Right. Trello is a free website that we can use to manage projects. You guys are going to be trained on how to use Trello. I'll be the one taking you in that training, teaching you how to use Trello, teaching you how to use GitHub. You're going to have access to videos that you can watch over and over and over again. So what have we learned so far? We've learned the art or what is involved in developing a real world solution. And we've also come to understand project management methodologies and also what we mean by version control. So moving forward, what we're going to be doing is at the end of this session, this video that has been recorded is going to be made available for everyone via our YouTube page. And you guys can go there to access the video, watch them all over again, and get yourself familiarized with these concepts that we've actually discussed in this session. Also, you guys are going to have a take-home assignment, which is going to be made available by tomorrow, right? So tomorrow you're expected to take your time and actually develop a problem statement, right? So the use of this problem statement is to actually test your knowledge, right? On what does it, what are the anatomy, what is the anatomy of a problem statement? How were you able to take the problem at hand and actually consolidate that problem into a problem statement so that your CEO can actually understand that, okay, this person is a data analyst as they claim to be. This person has the ability to break down problems into smaller parts. So we're going to be calling on everybody one after the other. I want to get your feedback on what you expect from this entire 12 weeks, right, of doing data analytics with Voyaj AI. And if you have any questions, your questions are welcome. So Temitope, let's go with you first. Yeah, Temitope, can you hear me? Okay, Tomide, let's move on to you. So you just have to just introduce yourself and tell us what you're expecting, right, throughout your stay with us in Voyage AI. How you expect to see yourself in 12 weeks. And if you have any other question, you can go ahead and ask.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I expect, what I'm expecting to be in the next 12 weeks, yeah, to be a good data, and I mean, I don't think it'll be a smooth journey, but we can push.
Yeah, we can
Up.
hear you.
Hello.
I can hear you now. Sorry.
Yeah, as I was saying, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Like what I expect to be in the next 12 weeks to understand more and make research there and ask questions. But for now, I don't think I have any questions. Yeah, that should be all.
Okay. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Tomide. Right. So let's go to Nafisat. Nafisat, the floor is yours. Introduce yourself, then tell us what you hope to expect. And if you have any question, go ahead and ask your questions.
Yeah. Hello, good evening. My name is Nofisat Lawa. Mm, I'm expecting, let me say, I'm expecting a lot. Like,
Okay, Nafisat, we can't hear you.
funny, actually. So I think that's my own hope. And regarding the question that you said, um downloading Google Slides. So maybe you can help with that since you said you're going to help with installing some apps.
Okay, okay, we'll get onto that. We'll get onto
All
that.
right, thank you.
All right, Temi Tope, you can go ahead and ask. So introduce yourself. Go ahead and introduce yourself, then tell us what you expect at the end of this session or at the end of the 12 weeks. And if you have any question, go ahead and throw your question at us.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. Good evening, all. My name is Muminat Abdurazak. My expectation for this course is I expect, well, like you mentioned the other time, that we'll be working in groups and all of that. I'm very, very happy with that because I expect to network, to meet people, to learn, to work in groups. I have a lot of expectations, and so far, from what I am seeing, I think this is going to meet my expectation and it's going to even wow me much better. So, thank you very much for this opportunity. For my questions, I would like to ask, how many days in a week is this class? What time is the class? Those are basically what I want to know. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So basically this class is going to be 2 days in a week, right? Because we understand that most of you guys work or you guys have jobs. So we don't want to create a conflicting time or put pressure on you when you should be working and you're also trying to run around to meet up with classes, right? So even though the sessions are recorded, right, we want to create a favorable learning experience for everybody where you're learning at a relaxed pace. So the sessions are going to be 6 p.m. But I think we have to arrive at a consensus. So our time is 6 p.m. 6 p.m. on Friday, 6 p.m. on Saturday, right? But we're going to arrive at a consensus. That is meaning that do we adjust the time to 7 p.m. or do we leave it at 6 p.m. both on Fridays and Saturdays? So that we can create, so that nobody is being caught under pressure. Because I understand Lagos traffic or Abuja traffic or wherever you might be. I know how the traffic is, or maybe the pressure is closing from work and you're trying to run home to meet up with classes, right? So we want to create that favorable environment for everybody. Then Monday and Monday to Thursdays are days where you are expected to go to these videos, go to the learning website and access the contents there and learn or practice whatever has been done with you during the live session. Then on Saturday, you are going to be having one-on-one calls with me every 2 weeks, which means that 6 times out of that 12 weeks, you are going to be with me one-on-one, which means you and no one else, just me and you together on that call. You pour your heart to me. I want to know how you're coping with work and coping with studying as well. Then we can look for how, if you have any questions, we can look for how we can strike a balance, help you with your questions, and give you insights, right? Strategies on how you can even learn effectively depending on your learning speed. All right. I hope that answers the question, Temitope.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. In much details. I would like to suggest that for the time, I for one would like the time to be adjusted to 7 p.m. Like I mentioned to you this evening, when you asked me to join the class, I told you that I was on transit.
Okay.
So like Friday is even one of my busiest days. So I think I will plead with you and the board anyway to please adjust the time to 7 p.m. so that it can be much convenient for me. But let's hear from others or probably carry out a poll vote or something just to make it fair to everybody.
Okay, so if we want the time to be moved to 7 p.m., can you just raise your hand, click that button and raise your hand? Do we have any other 7 p.m. in the house? Emmanuel and Tomide, are you guys going for 7 p.m. too? Okay then, and I'm judging that Emmanuel came late, so I'm judging 7 p.m. might actually be cool for you, right? So, okay, let's see how that goes. 7 p.m. carries the votes, but more information will pass after today's session. Okay. So,
All right, thank you very much.
all right, Martha, let's move on to you. So introduce yourself and tell us what you hope to achieve at the end of these 12 weeks. And if you have any questions, go ahead.
Good evening, guys. I'm actually on transit, so I may not be able to take my maybe later. I'm just going to join the WhatsApp. Just give me some time.
Sorry, I can hardly hear you. Is it just me?
Okay, so Emmanuel said he's on transit and we might not be able to hear him or he might not be able to communicate with us, right? So, okay, so Martha, can you go on?
Hi everyone, I'm
Hi.
Martha. I'm Martha Daniels. My expectations are I want to be well grounded in data analysis. Like for the 12 weeks, I should be able to do one or two out. I think someone is doing something in the background.
Okay, you can go ahead.
All right. So that my expectations are I want to be well grounded, like to handle one or two by myself before the end of the program, and also to network and handle the tasks in groups. So these are my expectations. For the questions, I wanted to say something about the time, but Temi has already done that, so I'm fine with that. So thanks.
Awesome. Okay, Martha, thank you for that. And we as a team at Voyage AI, we actually want to exceed that one or two, right? We want you to be able to do a lot. at the end of the 12 weeks. And you'll be confident enough to actually not only just apply for jobs, even work as a freelancer when you're working with companies as an individual. That is our aim. That is our goal at the end of 12 weeks. And we want to work with you to actually achieve that. And not just for Martha, but for everyone here and every other person that's going to join us. All right. We wish we could listen to Emmanuel, but we might not be able to do that. Right. Or Emmanuel, you can just drop a chat in the group, right? Introduce yourself to everyone and tell us what you hope to achieve at the end of the 12 weeks, and we'll get right to you on that group. Right. So when we come to the softwares we are going to be installing, so this is what is going to happen, right? You guys are going to be moved to a Discord application. So let me share my screen and share what the Discord application looks like. Right. You're going to be moved to a Discord application. Let me see if I can. Okay, good. So this is what the Discord server looks like. Right. So let me go to. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So why are we using Discord? Discord is because tech professionals don't really
Yes,
use
we are
WhatsApp.
seeing it.
Okay. So we're using Discord because tech professionals don't use WhatsApp, right? Tech professionals use either Slack or Discord. And when you're working in an organization, you won't be using WhatsApp. You'll be using Slack, ClickUp, or even Discord, right? This is because it enables for more collaboration. In fact, why chatting on Discord, you are listening to a tune or a music, it was developed for we tech professionals, right? So when you get into the Discord, you'll be invited and you will likely find yourself in welcome and rules, right? So you can introduce yourself here, letting us know that you've actually joined the server. So everybody you need to sign up to Discord. We're going to share the link on WhatsApp that you can use to download Discord. You sign up like you're signing up on Google, just simple sign up. You can use your Google account to sign up. Then you are going to be seeing for the basic course, you guys are going to have different resources called the Excel resource, SQL resource, and also Power BI resource. There's also going to be another resource called Thrive. Right, this Thrive is where you're going to have access to videos. This Thrive is where you're going to have access to videos that will deal with some mental limitations that you might have as a data analyst. One of them is called imposter syndrome. It's normal, we understand that. I face that, and most times I still face that. Even when I've broken a barrier, I find myself still facing that. It's a normal thing. Right. So what we want to do is we don't just want to teach you skills. We want to break down every mental limitation that you might have to help you reach your goal as a data analyst. Because like they say, every change starts from where? The mind. So we want to actually help you do that. We want to help you develop your soft skills, develop mental capacity, and everything you need to actually succeed as a data analyst. So you're going to be having Excel resources, SQL resources, Power BI resources, and also you are going to be having your Thrive resources, which is somewhere it has not been added because you've not arrived there yet, right? It's going to be added from week 3. All right. So here we have off topic. Off topic is where you guys can gist about anything, right? You can gist about anything you want to gist about. It could be what is going on currently in Nigeria or what is going on in the world. So you are not allowed to make those kind of gists on any other channel, only on the off-topic channel. That is why it's called off-topic, which means you can gist about anything you want to gist about. You can crack jokes. You can drop memes. Please drop memes. I want to laugh. It's very important in life, okay? So you can drop memes or crack a joke or do anything you want in the off-topic channel, right? You're free enough to do that. Then in the lounge is where you can listen to music, or you can do anything basically, or you can have a very brief call in the lounge, right? You're allowed to do that. You can meet with a team member in the lounge, or you can come to the meeting room and meet with a team member. Probably you want to share your screen. You don't want to meet in Google Meet. You are free to do that. As time goes on, you'll find out that you are getting familiar with Discord, because Discord is a fun place to be, right? As time goes on, you learn how to play some games on Discord. The more you progress, right? The more you use Discord, the more Discord allows you to use these features. All right. Then when you join Discord, right, you will now be given access, right? So when you come to Excel resources, I'm sure you guys will have Excel on your, what they call it, on your laptops, right? You come to SQL resources, you are going to see the link and the video, YouTube video that guides you on how you can install MySQL. Then when you come to Power BI resources, you are going to see a link where you can download Power BI and also a video that guides you on how you can install Power BI, right? You might not actually see the video for Power BI because it's pretty straightforward, right? But everything you simply need, you are going to be getting or using them here. You also be getting a channel called GitHub and also a channel called Trello, right? All these channels are just everything that has to do with all those tools so that you don't get lost or get confused in any way. I hope this is helpful, guys.
Yes, very helpful.
Yeah.
I look forward
Thank
to
you very
using
much.
it.
Awesome. So the first thing you guys are expected to do is to download Discord, which I'm going to share the link. If you are using Microsoft Store, right, you can go to your, if you are using Windows, you can go to your Microsoft Store and download Discord directly from there. But if you are not using Windows, or even though you are using Windows and you want to download it from an external site, I'm going to be sharing the link on WhatsApp where you can download Discord from. But please, if you're using Windows, go ahead and download it from the Microsoft Store. It's much easier that way. And that brings us to the end of today's session. So I really look forward to working with you guys, and I want to see what we can achieve together, right? We want to take you guys from knowing how to do nothing in data analytics to knowing how to do everything in data analytics, right? Please, it's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel like you don't know how to do it, right? But as time goes on, you realize that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Thank you guys for today. Does anybody have any question whatsoever?
I'm so sorry, I joined late. I was actually in another meeting. I don't know if I don't know what we discussed today, but I hope there is a recording so I can quickly grasp what we discussed since this is the first class. I'm sure it's an introductory class and it's very important. I don't know if I can maybe access the recording to quickly go through whatever was discussed.
Okay, yeah, so this recording is going to be made available at the end